All right, so we will jump into the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. This is the one that was passed last week and becomes effective April 1st. It does sunset at the end of this year. It basically has two components to it. We've got emergency paid sick leave and emergency paid family leave. So the paid sick leave is up to 80 hours. Or the average number worked for your part-time employees. It can be used for the employee's illness. That is paid at their regular pay, 100% of their regular pay, up to the maximum stated. And then it can also be used for a family member that has been quarantined or for someone who can't work because their child's school or daycare provider is closed. For that reason, or those two reasons, it is paid at 2/3 of the employee's regular rate of pay, also subject to the state of maximums. All W-2 employees are eligible. So as soon as they're hired on, they're eligible. There is no waiting period, regardless of any waiting period you may already have in place. The emergency paid family leave. So this is up to 12 weeks paid at 2/3 pay. But the first 2 weeks, while technically under this portion are unpaid, they would be covered under the paid sick leave. The only reason that an employee can take this time off is because their kid's school or child care center is closed and they are unable to work. The only eligibility requirement for this one is that it's for employees that are eligible after 30 days of employment. So while it generally is following a lot of the regular FMLA requirements, this is very different, the eligibility. So at 30 days of employment and they're eligible. We've had a lot of questions about the exemptions for employers with less than 50 employees. So the wording is that it may be available. What the DOL has posted, they say that it will be based on simple and clear criteria that make it available if it jeopardizes the viability of your company, and guidance will be available and that you should document why. So I'm not really sure I believe them when they say it will be simple and clear, but that's what they've posted so far. However, we're going to get into the tax credits, so it might be something that you don't really want to try to get an exemption for anyway. One thing to note, there is a poster required. Governments like to require us to put things up on our walls. The poster was made available yesterday. We have that available on our resources page. You will want to post this. We have a lot of employees working from home or not working, so we'd also recommend that you email that out to your employer base. On the FMLA portion, this emergency paid family leave, we're still waiting on further guidance. There will be notices required that are going to follow similar to the current FMLA forms, but they will be a little bit different. And for those of you with less than 50 employees that don't really deal with this, so we're seeking information from the Department of Labor to make those things available for you. A quick note, this was just listed in the guidance that came out last night from the Department of Labor. If an employee is furloughed or laid off prior to the April 1st date, they're not eligible for the paid sick leave or paid family leave. So that was a question that we were getting a lot. So if you lay them off, or even if they're still employed, but you furloughed them and they are not working, and that could be either actually prior to April 1st or after, they're actually not eligible to take this. So that's something to kind of watch. On the next slide, we've kind of broken this out so it's a little bit easier for you to see the reasons why someone can take the leave and then how much you have to pay. So you basically got 100% pay, 80 hours for the employees, and then 2/3 pay on the bottom half of the screen for the other reasons listed there. Number one, employee subject to quarantine or isolation order. I've heard attorneys give two different opinions on this, because what we don't know is that a quarantine or isolation order, that terminology is usually geared toward an individual, not these broader shelter-in-place orders and for closures. However, the Department of Labor guidance suggests that it would apply to those broader orders because of some of the language. So we're still looking for that. Numbers 2 and 3 are pretty straightforward. The employee has been advised quarantine or they're experiencing symptoms. Note there on number 3, a positive test is not required. So if they're sick and they're concerned they have coronavirus or they're just unsure, it does state that they have to be seeking a medical diagnosis, but you know, I wouldn't be spend too much time on that. So do note for all 6 of these reasons under paid sick leave, basically it's the employee is unable to work or telework. So one of the questions is, will we have telework available, but the employee says they can't. So maybe they have a 3-year-old at home and they really can't get their job done with their 3-year-old running around. So maybe you have work for them to do and they can't do it. They would be eligible to take the paid leave for that reason. Documentation guidance was just released last night as well. Basically, they are saying that if you are intending to take the tax credit, which everybody will be, that you do need to keep documentation. We will be, I'm not going to go into the details now, but we will copy that off their page and make that available. I mean, it's basically just the employees, you know, dates of the leave, the reason for the need, maybe an email from the school closure, that type of thing. But we are recommending employers to be flexible with that. All right, so how are you going to pay for this? This goes into the tax credits. So just generally, Jack will go into more specifics, but employers are receiving 100%, so it's a dollar for dollar tax credit for any of this mandated paid sick leave or paid family leave. There are some health insurance costs included in that, and we're waiting for further guidance from the IRS on that. So Jack, do you want to kind of talk about?
I'm going to be covering. Yeah, I'm going to be covering this in a little bit more detail in a later page where I get into how we're going to automate this. And one thing I'll point out is Andrea, as kind of the normal course of our business, is focusing on the issues that you guys really need to know about, the things I like to call the doom and gloom stuff. Whereas the stuff I get into is I'm going to get into is more the tax credits and loans and loan forgiveness and how we're going to automate a lot of the stuff. So I get to come in talking about all the fun stuff. But the punchline to a lot of this is for our clients, we're going to be automating most of this stuff for you. So it's really going to be relatively simple to deal with this. We're going to be automating the tax credit calculations and all that stuff and getting you the most amount of cash as quick as possible. So you really, to the extent possible, not out of pocket for these payments. But I'll get into that in a little bit of detail after Andrea's presentation.
All good news. I'm all done. So it's all over to you now.
Oh, well, there you go. Talk about stepping on your own lead, huh? Okay. So, all right. Well, then I love when I'm my own segue. I don't even have to get into my John Lennon Imagine rendition for you guys. A couple of things that I wanted to, before I get into the meat and potatoes, a couple of things I wanted to get into, touch on Andrea's points. Most people that are on this call are probably from Florida, Texas, Arizona, or California. That's where the majority of our client base hangs out. We have provided you guys links in my prior emails to the unemployment websites there. So as things change, you should have those links. We will continue to update our resource page as things change, and if things change substantially, then I'll be sending out emails as well for you guys. There's also some states are going to be using the additional funds they're receiving for unemployment to waive any additional unemployment rate increases. So that's to be determined which states are going to do that, but the theory would be that a lot of the claims that are going to be happening right now are not going to be looked at as far as affecting your unemployment rate for future years, because obviously this is a an exceptional situation. I think those are the only points that I wanted to mention as far as Andrea's. One other thing, as far as taking temperature, you are able to take temperature for all your employees, but orally only, please. I think that's not in OSHA, but that's just good taste. Okay, so having said that, guys, let's get into a couple things to make life easier for you guys. So first thing, how are we going to automate all the sick pay stuff that Andrea just mentioned? Pretty simple. In our system, we added 2 new pay codes, one called sick-C19 self and another one called sick-C19 family. If any of your employees qualify for either of those two, you're just going to record any sick pay under those 2 pay codes. For those clients that use our PTO system where employees can enter their own PTO, then as of Monday, those codes will show up as PTO options for employees to pick. For those employees that don't use our PTO system and just enter everything directly into payroll, that's fine. Those codes will show up directly in payroll. Either way, however you get those hours recorded in our system, we're going to automatically do everything after that point. We're going to calculate the rate of pay for each one of those, either the 100% rate for the self or the 2/3 rate for the family. We're going to cap out the daily limits. We're going to cap out the 10-day limit on the self and the up to 60-day limit on the family. So we'll do all that as long as everything's being recorded properly by date. We'll do the math behind the scenes. And then any sick pay that's recorded anytime. So technically, those codes should only be used for April going forward. That's the DOL guidance. If you have had a situation where you've used those codes already for March wages, then contact your CSR and we'll work with you and kind of figure out how to deal with that. But that's really a small issue on scope of things. But in any case, whatever you use going forward in those codes, we're automatically going to compare that against whatever 941 liability you have. That's Social Security, Medicare, Employee Social Security, Medicare, and FIT. The system's automatically going to compare everything and give you the maximum credit on each payroll. So as an example, if I have $800 of sick pay that I used this week, of these 2 sick pay codes that I used this week, but I have $1,000 of 941 liability, then we're going to give you a credit for $800 right on your invoice. So you're actually not paying for the sick pay. You're not out of pocket or out of cash at all for that. If on the other hand, you have the flip side where you have $1,000 of sick pay this week, but only $800 of taxes, then we're going to give you credit for $800, carry forward the other $200, and then next week, when you have more taxes and maybe less sick pay, we're going to do a rolling sum and give you credit. So we're going to automate that completely. So you really just have to keep track, put in the usage, the 2 usages, and we're going to do all the magic behind the scenes. We're also going to be applying for whatever sick pay gets used to the extent your employees have health insurance, and that's you're using our system, our benefit system to record health insurance. We're going to prorate how much of the health insurance gets allocated to the sick pay and apply that to the credit as well. So obviously that's a lot of programming in a very short period of time, but we're going to work all this weekend to make it happen. And over the next week, have a little patience with us, but we'll definitely make it all automatic, and we'll take care of it for you, because it's a lot of complicated calculations, but we'll take care of it. The goal ideally is you just use the codes, your employees get paid. When it caps out, it caps out, and you don't actually go out of pocket for any of those payments, because we're offsetting it to the extent possible with taxes on that individual payroll or on the next week's payroll. If you end up in a situation where you just have more sick pay usage than your taxes allow for, and you're upside down on that case, then obviously we're going to take it out of future payrolls. But even at the end of the quarter, if you still had more sick pay used than taxes, then when we generate your 941s, we're going to fill it out in such a way that it's going to show that you have an extra credit coming to you, and the IRS has promised to give a swift refund of that money. I've heard 2 weeks. Obviously, the IRS will probably be a little overwhelmed, so it may take them longer than that. But as soon as we file the returns, and we'll try to file them as quick at the end of the quarter as possible, then the IRS should be in the process of issuing those refunds. So that's that. And I'll get into some math a little later on when I get into the recommendations. But one thing, just as a rule of thumb, if someone's making $1,000, then FICA, Medicare, all that stuff comes out to about 15%. FIT all over the board, but let's call it another 20%. So you're saying, so that's about 35%. For every $1,000 you pay, you're probably paying about $350 of 941 taxes. Might be more, might be less. And you're also going to be paying taxes on a bunch of people that you're not worried about sick pay, that are just regular salaried people or officers or people that are just going to stay on the payroll. So as a very rough rule of thumb, I would expect you should have enough taxes to cover at least 35% of the amount for sick pay, where you'd be cash neutral every payroll. If your sick pay ends up being more than 35% of your total wages for the week, then you'll probably be in a situation that the sick pay is more than taxes, and then it'll roll over to the next week, or worst case to the tax return. But that's probably a good rule of thumb, 35-40% of, if more than 35-40% of your wages for a week are this new sick pay code, then you're probably going to be a little bit out of pocket on that short term.
Families First Coronavirus Response Act questions. So if an employee was sick and has asked for sick pay prior to April 1st, does any of this apply?
So we covered that.
Yeah, it's effective for leaves beginning April 1.
Yep. Okay.
If you have a lot of that happening, call us and we'll work through the particulars with you guys. As a general rule, the official reading is that the hours have to be after April 1st. There may be some things as you're we get into specifics with you, where we can tap in their standard PTO, use that first, and then use the sick after that, and loan forgiveness. It all works out magically. But we'll get into those specifics with you guys when we talk to you one-on-one.
But if somebody does rehire somebody for work, so let's say they've laid someone off and then something changes and they actually do rehire them April 5th, they are then eligible for paid sick leave. They would have to work first, would be my read of it. But you know, they come back for a day and they work and then they're sick, they're eligible for that paid sick leave because there's no waiting period for it.
Next one is, are the 80 hours given COVID paid outside the 40 hours of AZ sick time requirement? I believe we kind of covered that.
Well, okay, that's a little different because Andre, you tell me your read, but everything we've said so far is the company policy benefit is separate than this. I would probably extend it to say that the mandated California or Arizona sick pay requirement is also separate from this, but you tell me your read.
Yep, it's all completely separate and above from any company policy you may have in place, whether it's mandated or just company choice. And you cannot make them use your own paid sick or PTO first. They have to be able to use this, which again, with the tax credits, it's beneficial to you.
Yeah, with the exception of if you had some things prior to April 1st, you know, there may be some accounting that we need to kind of work through with you, but yeah.
Are 1099 employees eligible for unemployment benefits?
Nope, 1099s are not employees, they're independent contractors, so they're not eligible. So none of this applies to your 1099 independent contractors.
I will tell you, there in the stimulus bill debates, they were talking about unemployment benefits for 1099 people and Uber drivers and things like that. To my understanding, I don't believe any of that has passed, but that might be coming down the pike at one point.
You're right, and I'm sorry, I was thinking of it more in terms from the employer claiming it against your employment. So, but for 1099s, yeah, the states are expanding that, but it's not going to be counted against the employer. It's not going to have anything to do with you as the employer.
But it's not a thing today. It's something that they're still talking about, correct?
I think it actually is, but I think it's at the state level. So which ones are rolled out effective? I think it's going to be at the state level.
And we'll provide it. We'll do a little bit more digging on that, and we'll get you some guidance on that.
Are teleworking employees eligible for the emergency paid sick leave?
So employees are eligible when they cannot work or telework. So if they are teleworking and they're actually doing work, then they're working, they're being paid, and they're not eligible for it. If somebody can't telework, so they normally telework, but they can't for some reason, and it's a qualifying reason, then they would be eligible for the paid sick leave.
So what if their kids are just really loud and obnoxious in the background and you can't stand being on a conference call?
Yeah, so like I have my kids duct taped in the other room right now, so they are quiet. But
You watch the duct tape first. I think we're fine.
of course, in our house, of course.
If we encourage an employee to take sick leave under one of these codes, so we receive the credit and they choose the family code sick leave, would they only be paid at 2/3 of their salary?
Yeah, if the reason they're taking it is for family, not for their own personal isolation or whatever, then it's 2/3. And there's other limits that we emailed you, and I don't remember if they were in this presentation or not. There's hard dollar limits. Andre, do you have them off the top of your head? Besides it being 2/3 for the family and 100% for the regular, what's the dollar limit, the daily dollar limits? Like,
Oh, it's $200.
$200 for family.
And then 510 for the.
510. So do the math, but basically, if someone can't receive, and we'll cap it automatically, someone can't receive more than $500 and $513 or whatever it is under the self thing per day times 10 days, and they can't receive more than $511 per day, and they can't receive more than $200 for the family, which would mean that if their daily pay was more than $300, then the 2/3 of that would be capped out at $200. But you could, but Andrea, if that's less than their pay and that's not enough to pay the bills, and their hours are reduced, could they get sick pay? Could someone get sick pay, get their 2/3, and then also either get unemployment, or get paid by the company for hours worked to supplement that that pay? My gut tells me no, because you can't pay them twice for the same hour. But if it's a question of they're working 4 hours, they're getting 4 hours of sick pay and 4 hours of regular pay, or they're getting 4 hours of sick pay and then request unemployment for the difference. You could do that as long as nobody's getting paid twice for the same hour. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so basically I haven't seen anything that would preclude an employer for basically truing them up. That would be fine. But I have seen things where if they are getting paid any kind of paid sick leave or paid family leave, they're ineligible for unemployment for that time frame.
Okay, so just to walk everyone through the math, and we'll program that as well. If someone is capped out at 2/3, let's say $200 for the day, but they usually make $500 for the day, and the company chooses to true them up, we'll record it we'll allow you to record in a way that you pay them $300 out of the as regular pay, $200 as family sick pay. The $200 you'll get the credit for, the $300 you won't. But then if you do the loan forgiveness, $300 applies towards the loan forgiveness, the $200 wouldn't. So it kind of ends up equaling out. We'll give you specific, at the end, we're gonna put together a very detailed document on exactly the sick pay and the deferment and stuff, just so you know which buttons to press, but that should make sense.
The first and second week of paid sick leave is under the employee's paid sick time law that was effective July 1st, 2017. Is that right? We are not obligated to pay all 80 hours apart from their regular paid sick leave. Yeah, this is separate.
This question is coming from Arizona, where our paid sick leave, and so it is separate and above and apart from, and this paid sick leave must be offered first.
Yep. Okay. If the sick time is greater than the payroll taxes in a given pay period, will we be out of pocket until the IRS refunds the 941 filing, or will TAG be out of pocket until the IRS refunds?
Well, one thing I can tell you that I know about life is TAG will never be out of pocket. Yeah, so basically, by the way, everyone, it's just TAG, not TAG Pay. We just couldn't get the tag.com website, because that stupid watch company already had it. Yeah, so the way it'll work is the amount of credit that you're taking sick time, we will give you the maximum reduction on your invoice up to the total cumulative 941 taxes due for that quarter, and it'll be rolling. So again, if you overblow it in the first payroll, have more sick pay than you do taxes, then, but not on the second payroll, then we'll kind of catch up. But at the end of, at any given point, if your quarter date taxes are less than your quarter date sick pay usage, then you will have paid the excess out of your pocket, and then at the end of the quarter, when we file the 941s, you'll get back a check from the IRS. So we're facilitating the whole process, but we're not getting involved in the cash flow to the positive or negative. It's just whatever credits you can take, we're gonna maximize them out there, but we're not taking the money in advance from you or lending you money. We're neutral on that.
If we did a reduction in force and people decided not to use their PTO to make up the hours, will we not be able to use the paid sick leave come April 1st?
If someone's terminated basically from you, then they don't have sick pay available. But if you say, no, they're not terminated, they're active, they're just not getting paid, then they can use the paid sick leave. So it's a little bit of semantic. Just don't, I guess, the takeaway from this whole thing is just don't terminate someone in the system. And if you did terminate them, unterminate them. And if you terminated them, recognize that their benefits probably got terminated. So if you unterminate them, let us know. Do you want their benefits reactivated, or do you want to keep the benefits terminated? But just keep the person active, and then they can use the paid sick leave, no problem.
All right, well, thank you, folks. That is the end of our questions from the audience. We've covered a lot of material, a lot of questions from you folks, both that we've had historically as well as today. If you need more detail, if you had one of the questions that we said specifically, reach back out to us and make sure that we can get to you to answer the question more detailed for your situation. Please do that. Also, again, understand that there is a lot of stuff going on. We're going to constantly be updating the resources page with more information as we get it. We might even do another one of these in the future, depending on what is going on in the world and any new laws or regs that are relevant. And with all of the questions and requests, et cetera, that are coming through, we ask you to be a little bit patient because we're trying to get to you all as quickly as possible. We definitely want to make sure everybody gets answers, but we want to make sure we're giving you good answers as well, and not just something quick and dirty. So we appreciate your time. If you have anything else, feel free to reach out to us, but we appreciate it. Good luck and be well, and I'm sure we'll talk to you in the coming days. Thank you.